We have several people from all over. So good afternoon, good morning, and good night or good evening. I know many of you are from the West Coast, and the West Coast is a place that I've called home before. It truly is an honor to be here with all of you. Wow, I haven't done a Zoom event in so long since the pandemic, but this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, not because it's the most exciting, but because I am a survivor. I'm an advocate. I've been speaking for over 15 years and spreading the message as much as I can to whom will listen to me, to whoever will bring me into their spaces. And I want to just thank Rhett. He has been a champion. We've been doing this for over a month now. My schedule has been so insane of traveling and speaking, but today we are here. And really, I want to share my story with you, obviously, but I would also love to create a space that if you do have any questions toward the end, and I will be mindful, that's where the real juice happens. That's where we get to really ask questions. Please, there is no shame. And if you do ask the wrong question, it's okay. I don't get offended. I understand that domestic violence and intimate partner violence can be very triggering for some. And I always hope that I don't offend anyone, especially if you identify with a specific gender. I'm doing my best. But I want to just share a piece of my heart also to the Compass Family Services. Thank you for the work that you are doing. It is never easy when we are on the front lines, when we are doing the work that no one sees. We're doing the work that is the hardest, and sometimes we don't get the saying, I'm proud of you and thank you. So I want to be that person to say thank you, and I am very proud of you. It is not easy work. So Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Here we are. I can't believe October is almost over. I have no idea what I'm going to be for Halloween. Let me know what y'all going to dress up like, or do we still dress up as adults? I feel like I'm still a child, a kid at heart. So I'm looking for a good costume. But as Rhett mentioned, when we're talking about domestic violence, it can be heavy. And so before I get into the heavy stuff, I want to share with you where I grew up, what gave me the power to speak, who gave me the power to speak. And a part of that journey for me starts in the Boogie Down Bronx. That is where I was born and raised. It is the home of hip hop. And we are very proud when we say that. So I always have to mention that. And growing up, I grew up in a time that was very intense for New Yorkers. It was one of the toughest times, and in the era of the crack epidemic era. So seeing pimps, seeing women that sold their bodies for money, constantly being exposed to, unfortunately, people who were addicted to drugs all over the place. That really was the reality that I was born into. It wasn't abnormal for us to be late at night hanging out on the streets, and for us to just constantly be around violence, gunshots. And I remember when we would hear gunshots, we would just be like, oh, that was a gunshot. Oh, nothing. And when I think about it now, the thought of me hearing a gunshot next to my house, I'm like, we gotta move, honey. So it's just one of those things where when you're growing up in the urban community, AKA the hood, it's you adapt, you realize like, oh, this is life and I'm doing the best that I could. But I was blessed to have two parents who truly did the best that they could. They worked extremely hard, and I knew that things were a little different for me because I came from a two-parent home. Now we know that broken homes, we know that fatherless homes really can cause a lot of trauma for children. And I was blessed to have two parents. And I thought, man, and inside I knew that. I knew how blessed I was. And having them, my mom would always, tell me and share the power of my voice. She would always tell me, don't let anyone ever take your voice away. And I really took that. I really was like, okay, I'm not gonna let anybody take away my voice. And when you're from New York, you're just tough for like no reason. You're just angry at bacon. And I don't know why, but that's just who we are as New Yorkers. But I promise you, we are really good people. And I was also blessed to have a father who, it's interesting enough, he grew up in a home filled with violence. He witnessed his mother being abused by his father. And I remember he shared his story with me. One day he attended church. It's one of his favorite places to be. And when he came home one Sunday, he had this blue polyester suit. He was so happy. But when he walked in, he saw his sister crying. And he said, hey, what's going on? And there was a letter that was left for him. And the letter said, dear Felix, I can no longer be your mother. I'll see you later. Love, Mom. So at the age of 13, my father's mother left home. And a year and a half later, my grandfather left home. And my father found himself on the tough streets of the South Bronx, abandoned by the two people that were supposed to be there and protect him. And unfortunately, as he stayed in the street and he had to take care of himself, he later then became addicted to heroin. And I didn't find this out until years later, but my father was a heroin addict for close to 7 years. And if you were to meet my dad, you'd be like, there is no way, because he is one of the sweetest, just he gives everything. But to know that he unfortunately had to choose a certain kind of lifestyle because of the trauma that he experienced, he also made a choice to be in my life. And when we were talking about it, I said, Dad, why did you get clean? And how did you get clean? Because if you know, heroin is one of the hardest drugs to get clean from. And he said, well, something happened. I was about to rob my own sister, and her husband gave me two choices. He put a gun to my head and he said, you either get clean or you don't wake up. And my father was like, oh, okay, I want to get clean because I want to continue living. And when he entered the program, he told me, I knew I couldn't go on methadone because I knew I would become addicted to that. So he kicked heroin addiction cold turkey, and which was extremely powerful in me understanding the power of choice. And I will say that again, the power of choice. And I want you to hold on to that because I will connect that to my story in a little bit. So I'm giving you all this background because it's important as we work with clients, as we come across people who have dealt with domestic violence. We sometimes as a society, I'm not saying y'all, sometimes as a society, we assume that a person had to come from a broken home. We assume that the victim had to come from a place where they had daddy issues or they were sexually abused by their father. And for me, that was not the case. It was a total opposite. I had a father who was present. I had a father who was clean. I had a father who made the choice to not repeat the cycle of abuse that he grew up with. So I didn't see it. Now, I'm not going to say that we didn't get hit or that we didn't grow up in, a typical Latino household where there was screaming or there was, language that was colorful. But it wasn't anything that made me feel afraid or in danger, or I felt like, okay, I might just repeat this cycle. And as a young girl growing up in the Bronx, I felt like anything was possible. I felt like I could achieve whatever I wanted. And so many of us so many of my friends I was surrounded by, they didn't really dream big. They didn't really see themselves making it out of the Bronx. And I remember when I was young, I would look out the window and I would just stare into the sky as if my soul knew that there was more that was in front of me. Right? How many of us feel that way? that there's so much more, or there's something that I know I have to do in this lifetime. And the question that I would always ask myself, even as a young lady, was why not me? Why not me? Why can't I have all the other things that I saw on TV at that time? And when I entered high school, I was focused. I went to a Catholic school. My parents worked really hard to provide the best education possible. I played sports. I was a softball player, volleyball player. I was very athletic. I really thought that one day I could play for the Olympic softball team. That was my dream while I was in high school. I could say I was pretty good. I played all outfield now, which is weird because I'm very short, but I was extremely fast. So don't judge me, pray for me. And then all of a sudden, and junior year, I began dating someone. This man, this guy that came into my life. And what was so interesting was my mom, with that instinct, that motherly instinct, she knew that there was something not good. But because I was the rebellious teenager and I wanted to prove her wrong, I was like, Mommy, what are you talking about? I love him. He loves me. No one understands him the way I do. And he really was my first boyfriend in every way, intimately. And at first it was amazing. You know, that first time you fall in love with someone, you have all those feels. And I don't know how long into the relationship where things started to shift, but it felt like they shifted very quickly. And it was one of those moments where when you find yourself being abused, you go through and experience so many emotions. You go through doubt, you go through fear, you go through unbelief, like this cannot be happening to me. And that's why most people or most women who experience it don't leave right away, because they assume, well, maybe this was just one time. You know what? Maybe I did talk to him in a way that he didn't like and I deserved it. You begin to make reasons for the actions. And one day we were having a very heated discussion, and I was outside my parents' apartment. So my parents are inside watching TV. And as he and I were talking, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just, boom, he slapped me in my face. Now I'm 5'1". I was probably a little shorter then. He's 5'10". He was a construction worker, so he had very, very strong hands. And I remember when I was slapped across my face, everything went numb. I had a ringing in my ear and I couldn't feel my jaw. And in about what felt like a lifetime, it must have been seconds where my brain had to register, holy cow, he just struck me across the face. And this was the beginning. I remember that day because that was the beginning, that for the next 3.5 years, I would suffer. I would be abused physically and emotionally. And what's interesting enough is he terrorized me many times in my hallway, where I was feet away from my parents and they never, ever knew. And it breaks my heart to this day. I'm happily married. I have amazing children, but I'm still in contact with my teenage self. I still hold her very dear. And I've done so much work, but once in a blue moon, I still become a little angry. I still become a little sad that I was terrorized at such a young age and no one saw it. But I was also very good at hiding it. Hiding it because obviously I was ashamed. I was embarrassed, and I felt like I let my parents down. There were times the way that he would terrorize me it was just so intense and so psychologically, it hurt me in ways that I didn't even realize what was going on. And no one knew. I never screamed, I never would shout. And that's what abuse does. It silences our voice. It silences us in a way that even the loudest, most boisterous person can become so silent, because of the fear, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And after he slapped me, I remember I looked at him and he didn't have anything in his eyes. You know, when a cat is about to attack you and their eyes, their pupils grow really big and dark, that's what I was staring at. And I thought, my goodness, this person probably has no soul, who I thought loved me. When he walked away, I ran straight into the bathroom and I didn't even cry. I still didn't cry. I was just in shock, right? Because when you suffer trauma, you either freeze, flight, right? Or you fight. I was frozen. I didn't fight back. I froze. I just was in shock. And I hoped and prayed that, you know what, maybe this is never going to happen again, right? It's never going to. And unfortunately, it became progressively worse, from the isolation. That was a big thing, where he isolated me from my friends, and he would constantly make me feel gaslighting. He gaslit me. This is before the term gaslit was available. He was gaslighting me. I would feel so, and I use this very, as careful as possible, I did feel a bit crazy. I felt like I was losing my mind, because he would say things to me and he would make me feel as if I didn't know what I was talking about. So what is that? I would walk with him and there could be a man like a couple of feet away from us, and he would say, I know you're looking at him. I know you're looking at him. If you look at him when he walks by, watch what's going to happen. And you're thinking, there's no one coming my way. I'm not looking at anyone. So can you imagine a teenager whose brain is still not fully developed, whose identity is still messy? We're trying to figure out who we are. And all I can figure and hope for was that I would survive, that I wouldn't die at the hands of someone who would just shower me with love and then shower me with abuse and pain. And it was this constant battle. And I want to continue saying that, because when you're dealing with someone, especially if they've lost everything, if they've been living on the streets, the trauma and what you're thinking about, you're barely thinking about anything but either how can I get some water, how can I get something to eat, and how can I make it through another night. And when you're alone, it's even worse. When you feel like no one supports you, it's even worse to find the courage to speak up. So as we continued dating, it would die down, and then the beast would wake up. It would die down, and then the beast would wake up. And then eventually the beast hung out longer than what I wanted him to. And one day, my friends and I were hanging out. It was summertime. And I remember it was at night, and I saw a man walking that resembled my boyfriend at the time. And as I looked at him, I realized that he was holding hands with another woman. And my friends, their loyalty was to me. They wanted to retaliate. They wanted to just hurt the girl. And I was like, whoa, slow your roll. I don't need you to intervene. But the reason why I didn't want them to intervene was because they didn't know about my abuse. Because I would have been mortified if my friends would have found out that I was secretly being abused, because I was that tough girl who would always say, if someone came and put their hands on me, I would retaliate, and that was the complete opposite. Secondly, I didn't know if he would retaliate on them. And that's what happens with victims. We want to protect everyone else. We want to, it's especially when it comes from a woman, if there are children, we rather protect them than protect ourselves. That's just who we are by nature. And I wanted to protect them because I knew how really evil and mean he could get. And if he was to have a psychotic moment, I just didn't want to put my friends at risk. So I said, no, it's okay. So as he approached me, he let the woman's hands go, and he and I, of course, get into this argument. And again, he was gaslighting the situation. I had these shorts on, and he said, you just want men to look at you. And because you want that, now you're going to have to pay. And I'm like, brother, you were just holding hands with another girl. Like, hello. And we went to his apartment and that is where I really thought I was going to lose my life. That is where I thought everything was coming to an end. And we fought and we fought. And I had on this white shirt. Within a couple of hours, it was red. I felt like the Walking Dead. I felt like a zombie. I felt so stripped and powerless. And I thought to myself, man, why don't you please just end it already? End it for me, end it for yourself, or let me go. I knew I had to get out of that situation. I knew I had to run. I knew I had to just somehow try to escape. And I walk out and I run, and no one heard me scream. This time I was screaming. No one opened the door. No, I was hoping for maybe a neighbor who wasn't minding their business. But unfortunately, no one came. And he grabbed me and he said, now you're really going to get it. I thought, my goodness, this is it. This is where my story ends. This is where my parents might find me. And I'm only 18. I'm only 18. And I want you for a moment now, remember where you were at 18 years old. Where were you at the age of 18? What was your mindset? What were some of the things that you were experiencing? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it exciting? Because at 18 years old, we're supposed to be excited about life, right? We are sort of legal. We can do our own thing. You're getting ready for college and going on to discovering yourself even more. You're discovering your voice. And yet all I could do was wish for death at 18. That confident young woman who was outspoken and focused and wanted to play softball for the Olympics. I wouldn't say she was gone, but she was very, very, very far from me. I'd never recognized who I was. I didn't recognize myself any longer. And as he took me in the room, he grabbed a first aid kit and he began to just clean all my cuts and bruises and the blood. And he said, I'm so sorry. I just love you so much. That's why I do what I do. Did I leave? No. As we know, it takes a woman 7 to 8 times before she actually leaves. And that's not counting the amount of years or time that is within that moment, those moments where she tries to leave. And I didn't leave because, like I said, I was afraid. He was the only love that I knew. So as a teenager, your first heartache always just feels like you're never going to make it again in life. You're never going to fall in love again. And to me, that was just devastating. But what was even worse than that was the thought that I wanted to take my own life. So this is when the suicidal ideations really began to torment me, haunt me. The thought of just not wanting to wake up anymore tasted better than any kind of food I could have eaten. I never thought that I would be in this situation, especially growing up with the parents that I had. They were far from perfect because later on in life, I realized that my mom abused me, you know, emotionally and verbally, but it was still something that, wow, being hurt by someone physically when they cannot protect themselves really does something to you mentally. And so I woke up one day and I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to take my life. And I thought of all the ways that I could do it. And I was like, I don't like blood. I don't want to do this. And so I said, I will just drink a whole bunch of pills and liquor and pray that I don't wake up. And we all usually know when you try that, you don't die. You go to the hospital, they pump your stomach. And I was like, that's not going to be good. But then I heard this voice. And it said, don't do it. And so I got on my knees and I said the most honest prayer ever. And I asked God, I said, if you are real, I need you to save me because I'm not ready to die. But I can't do this on my own. I'm too connected to him and I don't know where to go. So if you think my life is worth saving, then please give me that strength to leave. And nothing magnificent happened. There were no lights. There were no white doves flying through my room. But two things happened in that moment. I decided to live and I decided to leave. And I took back my voice and I made the choice, going back to the choices that we make. I made that choice to say, no, I know that there is more to me than what we have going on. I know that I am not supposed to just stay abused. I know that I'm not supposed to be abused by someone who loves me. And I don't know how to do it. And it was simple as just making that decision, which is absolutely terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying to make that kind of decision when you have been abused for so long, when you don't have any access to resources, when you don't have the Compass Family Services, when you don't have people who, instead of judging you, they'll just say, how can I serve you? What is it that you need? Especially back then, I had the yellow pages and all there was women's shelters. I was a teenager. On top of that, I was in Catholic school. I wasn't even supposed to be having sex. So basically I was going straight to hell. That's what I thought in my mind. So I called him and I said, it's done. I don't want to be with you anymore. It's over. I don't want to be your girlfriend. I don't want to go through any of that. And of course, he fought and he came to my house and we argued. He tried to force himself sexually on me in my room. He tried to rape me in my room while this is all happening and my parents are in the next room. He finally left. But unfortunately, I still could not let him go. And I kept going back to him after we broke up and I became pregnant and I had to make the decision to have an abortion, which was to me the hardest thing. Having the abortion was much harder than actually having the abusive relationship happen. That's just my own personal journey that I've been on. And I made that decision. It was the hardest thing I ever did. At that point, I was about 19 and a half. And when that happened, I just put everything under the rug. And I said, I have to become someone and I have to use this as fire. So that way it never happens to me again. And I also promised God while I was in that room, I said, God, if you let me live, I will share my message until the day you bring me home. And I ain't ready to go. So, but I've been doing this I've been an actor for close to 20 years. I've been a speaker for close to 10 years. I've been an advocate. I'm speaking up using my platform as much as possible for over 15 years. I've done trainings. I realized, wow, I was blessed to be able to lead that situation. And I am fully aware that so many women, children, and men, because it happens to everyone, that they don't have the courage that they need to speak up. And so I've been an advocate. I've been using my voice. During the pandemic, I penned and wrote my second book, The Embracing Me, my memoir, where I go into this because we all know the power of story. We all know that we all have a story. And for some of us, we're in different places of our different chapters in life. But being able to write all of it, and it's called Embracing Me because I never really got to share about my abortion because of the judgment and how evil and mean people can be when you share about making that kind of decision, how judgmental. But because I was in a place of full transparency, I said, I'm okay. I'm okay with where I am and the decisions that I've made because I've made my tragedy into triumphs. My pain was not in vain. And today I get to stand where I'm married with my husband, not the abuser. It's been 21 amazing years. I have 2 beautiful children. I never thought that I would become a mother because when you experience what I do, you just don't think that you deserve it. Especially after an abortion, you just feel, for some, I'm not saying all, but for me, I never thought that I deserved being a mother, and I'm a mother to 2 beautiful girls. And every day I don't take that lightly. I understand the role of being a mother. I've traveled the United States. I've done a TEDx. I was in the movie Freedom Writers with Hilary Swank. And it was all because of that moment in my room where I chose to live and I chose to leave. And I took back my voice. And today I am here with all of you, sharing my story. And this is where now we get to ask questions and talk, because I've been talking for a bit and I know how heavy this could be. So however you would like to ask, or if Rhett, you would like to begin questioning, please, I am an open book. No
Absolutely.
pun intended.
Well, first I want to say thank you so much, April, for sharing your story, hearing your voice and hearing the gem you just dropped, that tragedy to triumph, and that your pain was not in vain, and it's led to the life that you have now and the woman that you are. It is truly powerful. For those of you that are in this room, I've put in the chat links to April's book, her best-selling book, Embracing Me, memoir, and her first book. You can also find that in the chat, Your Voice, Your Choice, a story of resiliency and redemption. What I want to do also is highlight our survey. It's really important that we get this kind of information. Not only does April want the feedback, but so do we. So please feel free to click on that link. And again, I'm just so appreciative of you, April, in your story, in your voice. We all know that relationships look different, and that intimate partner violence can affect everyone, no matter the community that you belong to or the person that you love, regardless of your race, gender, nationality, sexual orientation, age, disability status, economic status, religion, or nationality. And hearing stories like this are powerful. With that said, let me open it up to those in the audience. If you want to raise your hand, the Zoom feature will allow you to do that. All you have to do is look at the bottom of your screen, hit the reactions button, and that will allow you to raise your hand. That way I can see anyone that wants to ask April a question. You heard it from the woman yourself. April is an open book. Feel free to ask whatever it is that you want to know. And I want to open it up now so folks can ask questions. Does anybody have a question? I see Yesenia. Go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon, April. Thank you for sharing your story. It definitely was very impactful. I just wanted to ask, with regards to while you were going through this relationship, did you have access to any community-based organizations or any domestic violence advocate or anything along those lines to help you through the process, or did you end up leaving the relationship on your own? How was that for you?
Great question. I did not have access. Like I mentioned, the only thing back then, it was women's shelters and no access or no resources for teenagers whatsoever. We didn't even have social media. We didn't even have the internet. So it was one of those things, if you were able to hear about someone who had some kind of service, but literally no help at all. It was just my pure will to live and make it out. And also to not repeat that cycle. I was very aware that I experienced it one time and I was like, oh, hail to the no. This is never going to happen again. In the name of Jesus, if you don't mind me saying, because I just thought, I just can't. And that doesn't mean that I didn't suffer lots of trauma after. So, therapy for me was key, but this wasn't until years later. So I didn't share my story publicly until about 2010. So there was a 10-year span that no one knew anything and I never talked about it, ever. Because I grew up in the home that you go through stuff and you don't talk about it, right? Like just any typical Latino home, you see no evil, hear no evil, that's it. But once I became a public speaker, I realized like, oh, I think I need to share this with my dad. I think I should share this with my family. So it was a pretty interesting moment for my dad to find out.
Great question. Thank you, Yesenia. Does anyone else have a question that they'd like to ask? Feel free to either come off mute or use the reaction button and raise your hand.
And please don't feel, listen, I know we all have questions. I know that we all have, we wonder about some things like, why does a woman, who wants to stay in that situation? Like, why would they stay in that situation? Anyone with the right thought, like in the right mind, why would anyone? And I truly don't ever get offended by that question, because it is something that when we don't understand, it's when we become uncomfortable. But if that's something that you want to ask, or if you want to, let me put on my social media, just in case you don't feel comfortable and you want to chat after, I'm totally open to that as well. This is my Instagram, because sometimes, I get it. I truly understand.
Thank you for making yourself so available, April, and please do so. Please make sure that you are following April across all social media. You can find her on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, any social media platform. Please make sure that you are following her and listening to this message. I see a couple of different questions in the chat. If you are not comfortable coming off of mute, I can read your question. First, I see Nora. Nora's question for you, April, is how did your parents react to you telling them the story?
Shock. My father was shocked. He was the first person that I went to. And that was when I found out that he was addicted to heroin. So we had this beautiful father-daughter moment. And I thought, wow, okay, that's been a very long time that you've been holding on to things. How many people would feel so much better if they didn't live in secrecy or shame? And to have that moment where I saw my father, not as my father, but as a human being, a human being doing life and doing his very best. My mom, we had a very complicated relationship pretty much my entire life. So for her, she was also abused and she was exposed to that stuff. So when I started doing the work of how did this happen to me, it was generational. It was this thing that was already happening in my family, just sort of the way alcoholism happens. And so I felt like I was the one to finally break that chain.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. The next question we had, and again, if you're comfortable coming off mute, you can ask, is from Leandra. Which was, how do you continue to do the mental and emotional work to maintain your mental health now? Trauma that can be long lasting even if life is better and brighter now. What are you doing now to maintain and take care of yourself, able to maintain your mental health?
Lots of coffee and wine. No, I'm kidding. Just I'm not kidding. It's an ongoing process. Like I said, I've had a phenomenal network of people who are experienced. When I began training and understanding more about domestic violence, as I began taking just anywhere where I could become educated in understanding the severity of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, it really helped me in my own healing. When I understood where it came from, then I knew how to operate it. And I'm very aware of my triggers. I know what triggers me. I know what kind of person triggers me. So when that happens, I have tools to help me through that. I can be sitting down, and if I watch TV and someone is either getting sexually abused or there's abuse, it can bring up some feelings. So right away, I know I have a circle of influence of people who I can reach out to and process with. My faith is very important to me, and that really helps me get through, especially when I'm speaking about my story a lot. Those are some of the things that get me through. But yes, you are absolutely right. It's you have to just keep taking care of your mental.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. We have someone else that put in the comments, and again, you can feel free to come off mute if you'd like. Just want to say that I appreciate your role in Freedom Writers. To this day, it is on my top list of how impactful that movie was. You explaining your story now is reflective of how passionate you made Eva out to be. So thank you for that. So Zelton, thank you so much for that comment.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and that's where I understood, really, I became aware. I had this epiphany that, wow, I think I have something. I think I survived something, and I have this platform. How can I use it for good? How can I use this? Because I know how hard it is for many people to speak about their trauma, to speak about their pain. And unfortunately, children, when they suffer, right, in silence, because they don't even know, they're not even given the opportunity to speak. I think about the men who are abused, who live in this shame that is unfortunate, that we don't take serious when they say that they've been abused, unfortunately, and it just drives me crazy. And that's what ignites me to continue speaking. Being an actor obviously helps me really to live in these moments when I'm expressing my story and sharing it with others. But it was Freedom Writers that changed my life.
If you haven't seen the movie, make sure that you see it. April is absolutely amazing. I've also put April's social media in the chat, so feel free to click on the hyperlinks if you want to connect with April there. Next, we have a question from Evelyn. Evelyn's out of NYC. Is your ex-boyfriend to this day in denial of being an abuser? That seems to be the mindset of an abuser, and so the problem persists.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. If I'm sure. I've never named my abuser, and I never will, but I mean, I'm a public figure. I've been on many stages. I've been on TV. It's very clear that I've written my story about the abuse. I wonder if he's ever taken responsibility, but I won't know. And nor do I care to ask. I'm good. I have a very healthy relationship with my husband, who has loved me, who has accepted me for all of my flaws and brokenness, and has allowed me to utilize my voice in a very powerful way. I don't wish anything bad on my abuser. I've forgiven him. I've done all the work where, I had to let that go in order to move forward.
That's extremely powerful. Next, we have a question from Kyler. I'd love to know how or if you communicate your previous experiences and how you got through it all to your daughter, or if you plan on sharing that part of you one day. I often wonder how to do this for my own children in sharing these experiences.
For those of you who are parents, your children deserve for you to be healed. Whenever I'm working with parents who still have a lot of trauma, I say, you need to heal so your children don't inherit your pain. So that way they're not inheriting all of the mess and trying to figure out who they are and why do they act the way they do. So my book is a love letter to my daughters. And when they are ready, and I cannot wait to spill the tea and say, here, these are all the mistakes that mommy made. But praise God, here I am today, a healthy mom, a healthy woman, mentally, spiritually, in every way possible. And I'm fully present and open. Transparency is huge for me. It's the way that I've been able to get through a lot of the things. I don't spill the tea to everyone, but I'm also not afraid to say who or what I've done or the things that happened and how I've been able to move forward. So it is truly my love letter to them.
Wow. If you all haven't got the gist already, please make sure that if you're able, you pick up a copy of April's book, her most recent book, her memoir, and her first book. Also in the chat, I've dropped the number to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you or someone you know is struggling with domestic violence or intimate partner abuse, there are resources in the Bay Area, which is where we are located here at Compass Family Services, and the national hotline does exist. Also, I feel like I have to do a small plug because April's children not only are talented and amazing and beautiful, one of them voices a very popular character on PBS, is the primary voice of Alma on Alma's Way on PBS and is an award winner. So the talent truly does, that apple does not fall from the tree. And I will be sure to put that in the chat for folks. If anybody here watches PBS, if anybody, my baby loves that show. That's great. Well, you are looking at Alma's mom in real life. So my daughter also really loves that show. April is incredible in the coaching, and again, that talent doesn't fall from the tree. Considering that we have just a few moments left, and I want to be mindful of April's time and all of yours, does anyone else have a question that they would like to ask? April is an open book. Please take this time. Okay, I know I got your name right the first time. Is it Sabine?
Yes, yeah,
yes,
you got
okay.
it.
Please ask your question.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story and chatting with us today. It means a lot to me. I had a question more so along the lines of, and I'm sorry if I missed it at the beginning, if you had said this, but where and how did you find like the strength to share that part of your story? Because I have one of my own I'd like to share, but I'm terrified to go onto social media because the things that people say on there are just, I don't feel like I'm mentally ready to take on people telling me I deserved something, if you will. So that's sort of where I'm kind of, I need to figure out how, and I've already gone through like the, all the court cases and all this. And that to me is like probably as hard as it could get. But for some reason, a stranger telling me I'm invalid is more intimidating to me than actually talking to a judge about what happened to me. So yeah.
Sabine, well, thank you very much. I love that you have so much self-awareness. That's key. And like I said, I'm very aware of what triggers me. I guess because it's easier for me because I've been doing it for so long. But like I said, I'm very aware how hard it is. It really is to just even admit that. But you would be surprised how many people would connect with your story. You would be surprised how many people in your circle are secretly going through abuse. And because they don't have anyone saying it, they rather not say it as well. Whenever you are ready for your coming out moment, let it just come from a place of, hey, this is something that I've experienced, and I realize the power in sharing. My goal is to encourage. I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor, and I really just want to let you know that you are not alone, because people probably look up to you, right? That's something that we don't realize, that the people that look up to us. And for me, once again, it was in that moment of contemplating suicide where I felt so angry that I even had that thought. And we know now more than ever that children are taking their lives at a rate that we have never seen. So if my story can impact someone's life, even at an early age, or just the thought of like, if you don't commit suicide, I promise you, it could get better. It does get better. There's hope on the other side. If you're willing to just stay the course. And for you, I just want to encourage you. First of all, I'm proud of you for even speaking up. And I want you to know that someone needs to hear your story. And whenever you're ready and you need me to get on some little DM with you, I would be willing to do that and talk it over with you for real. Like I do this is what I do for a living, not just, Hollywood. But if anyone needs that help, that encouragement, I would love to stay connected with you and just chat even more. But that was the moment for me where I knew I had to say, use my voice.
Thank you so much. And I will definitely take you up on that.
Yes, thank you.
Such a great question and response. And make sure that you all check the chat. I dropped April's social media there. You can absolutely follow her quickly and efficiently there. We're coming up on time. We have 4 minutes. We have another question in the chat from CC April. It says, can you speak to softer forms of abuse like pushing and choking and the emotional manipulation, what that looks like and how to move past it?
I don't know if those are softer forms. Those seem pretty harsh to me. The pushing, those were all some of the things that I experienced. But what I will tell you even deeper are the nonverbal forms of abuse. The things that no one else sees, but that's there. So for example, my ex-boyfriend, when I knew he wanted to put me in my place, he would clench his jaw really tight and he would make a fist. And he did it so that way I would see it and no one else saw. And the moment he did that, I thought, I have no idea what's going to happen. That was obviously controlling me. With the gaslighting, once again, the love bombing, just constant love bombing. And then there would just be this torture at the same time. But the scariest thing was when he didn't speak, when he wasn't yelling. And those are some of the forms of abuse that I'm not sure we're fully aware of, because we assume that if it's only physical, then it's bad. But I tell people, verbal abuse, words are so powerful that it can take a person years to eradicate all of those negative thoughts. So once again, it's the nonverbal that we need to be aware of. Now I didn't have social media. I didn't have a telephone. So I can imagine how teenagers are experiencing abuse at just through their phone, their DMs, their, being exposed, using all of those tactics. So those were some of the things that he did to me that no one else knew, but I did.
Thank you. And we are getting ready to hit our final 2 minutes. Sabine also said anticipating the win and living in that anxiety. You're absolutely right. I can imagine it's terrible. I want to take this last second to do 2 things. One, please check the chat, everyone. I'm so appreciative of you all being here, supporting the Inclusion Talks series sponsored by Compass Family Services, and to thank April, who is a very, very busy person, for her time and her story. I really hope that you will take just a few minutes to answer our 10-question survey. It'll take you less than 3 minutes. April, I want to take time to do this because I've heard you mention this coming from a Latina family. We're on the heels of Hispanic Heritage Month just ending on the 15th. Can you give voice to what you wish you were empowered to do? I know you say that hear no evil, see no evil. What you wish you were empowered to do back then, and how you're going to role model that for your family today.
I wish I was empowered to speak about my trauma much earlier. Culturally, to this day, for a lot of families, especially in the Latinx community, and I'm speaking from my experience of the culture that I was brought up in, it is very rare when it comes to abuse, when it comes to coming out as far as the LGBTQ community. It is one of the hardest things to do. And even coming out and saying that you have been abused, people dismissing your pain, dismissing what you experienced, and saying, well, there's, you know, if you waited 10 years, then did it really happen? Yeah, it did. And I despise when anyone diminishes someone's trauma, because it's taken so long. Because it takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to even admit I was violated, whether that be sexually, however, in whatever form. So that's something I wish I would have taken care of, especially when I had my abortion. Especially when I had my abortion. And even to this day, people are so, they want you to choose. They, you know, everyone's so passionate, but I wonder, is anyone really listening? Are we really listening to the woman who has to make one of the hardest decisions of her life? So those are some of the things.
Wow. Thank you so much, April, for your time. Thank each and every one of you for joining us for the Inclusion Talk series. Again, please make sure that you are following April everywhere that she is on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Be sure that you pick up a copy of her 2 books. You can find them on Amazon. The links are there. If you've never watched Freedom Writers, please make sure that you do so. And April, just thank you so much again for your time, for sharing your story, for sharing your message. I really appreciate it. And I will leave the final word to you before I close today's Zoom. If you have anything to say to our remaining participants, the floor is yours.
I do. I really, I don't take this moment lightly. Whenever I get to share, I'm exposed to a whole new group of people who've never known me. And if you have watched movies or any television, then you really got to know the real April. But I want to leave you with all of this. Your greatest superpower is the ability to be empathetic. That is your greatest superpower, is empathy. You have no idea who needs a hug, who needs for someone to be listened to be heard. Empathy can literally save someone's life. And so as I leave you all, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to get emotional, it's just, this is very serious for me. And so whoever needs some empathy today, I want you to know that I see you, I hear you, and I am you. And I hope you all have a fabulous month, a fabulous holiday season, and just be good to yourselves. And don't forget to just breathe and take it easy.